Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Academy, announcing the 24th of our Italian Wine Ambassador courses to be held in London, Austria, and Hong Kong from the 27th to the 29th of July. Are you up for the challenge of this demanding course? Do you want to be the next Italian Wine Ambassador? Learn more and apply now at vinitalyinternational.com.
Welcome to this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls series on wine, food and travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. For the next weeks, we will be focusing on a dozen trophy-winning wineries from the competitions that took place in Verona at the start of Vinitaly in early April. The winning wines are without doubt some of the very best that Italy has to offer. What I'm most interested in discovering are the stories behind the bottles, learning about the wines themselves, of course, and also about the people who make them, where they're from, what they eat, how they live. It's a fascinating journey that will take us all across Italy, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. In this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls edition, I'm delighted to shine a spotlight on Cantina Toblino in Trentino, Alto Adige, which has just won the Best Sweet Wine Award at the prestigious 5-star Wines competition that took place in Vinitaly in April. My guest today is Giovanni Luigi Brumat, Brand and Export Manager at Cantina Toblino, joining me from this important cooperative winery in the heart of the beautiful Valle dei Laghi. Buongiorno, Giovanni. Congratulations on this important award, and thanks for being my guest today. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Marc, for this beautiful invitation. It is a pleasure to be here, and in a sunny day, it's even better. So I'm more than happy to talk briefly about our award, our prestigious award with 5-star wines, and about Cantina Toblino.
Great. Well, I'm imagining that sunshine in your beautiful area. So for our listeners who may be anywhere in the world, can you give us a vivid picture, describe the countryside of where you are so that we can all picture this Valle dei Laghi countryside?
Of course. So Valle dei Laghi is a beautiful place located in the southern part of Trentino Alto Adige region, near Lake Garda. We are about 10 kilometers from Riva del Garda. And the valley is characterized by 8 small lakes that are very, very helpful even for viticulture, because they retain it during summer periods and slowly release it in the winter and spring periods. So they have a kind of mitigation function in the area. Another important factor is, of course, the wind that comes from Lake Garda, so a warm wind that usually blows in the afternoon, and the stronger, colder winds coming from the north that are blowing during the late night and early morning hours. So imagine this beautiful valley with the lakes, with a lot of green, with a lot of vineyards that is surrounded by mountains, both in the east, west, and northern side. So in this area, you can do almost everything you want. You can go trekking, you can go walking, you can go biking using e-bikes, you can go climbing, you can do base jumping. In less than 1 hour, you can go skiing in the beautiful Madonna di Campiglio, for instance. You can do sailing sports in Lake Garda. So it's a really, really nice area, both for everything, for nature, for sports, for leisure, for food, and of course for wine. That's what we are here for.
Wow, it sounds absolutely beautiful. So we're just north of Lago di Garda, Lake Garda, into Trentino Alto Adige, around this system of lakes. I'm just picturing the vineyards and the mountains. It really sounds quite stunning. Now, the Cantina Toblino is a cooperative winery. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Cantina Toblino?
Of course. Cantina Toblino was founded in 1960, and at the beginning we weren't really producing wines. We were just bringing together grapes that were coming from various growers in the area. And after a few years, so I would say in 1964, 1965, we started producing the first wines, both bottled and bulk wines, especially from mature grape varieties that back then were really popular in this area. And they were both kind of local grape varieties. So there was Nosiola for the whites and Schiava for the reds. Nowadays, Nosiola is becoming popular again, we can say, but in 60 years, it has lost more than 90% of the total production in terms of vineyards and in terms of grape produced. But thanks to I would say, thanks to the awards that you are gaining with our Nosiola, both for dry whites or the sweet wine, as happened with the 5-Star Wines Award, we are trying to recover, we can say, Nosiola because it can produce stunning wines. So regarding our history, we can say that in the 1780s there was a huge development in terms of land management and viticulture here in the Valle dei Laghi, with the introduction or spreading of international grape varieties, international training system like the Guyot that was substituting the traditional Pergola Trentino system to allow more, let's say, an easier work for the wine growers in the vineyards. And then in the 90s, there was another changing, we can say from a low point of view, because in 1993, the Trento DOC appellation was the first Italian appellation entirely dedicated to the traditional method, the classical method, sparkling wine production in Italy. So that was another turning point that for Cantina Toblino, for the old Trentino, because from that point, the growers started to plant more and more Chardonnay for the production of sparkling wines. And then in near year 2000, there was another changing for Cantina Toblino, because we aren't just a cooperative company right now. We also have an Azienda Agricola of 38 hectares, from which we started the conversion to organic production and sustainable production. That, of course, over the years became popular in the area, and even more right now, a third, I would say, of our wine growers already use organic practices. So right now we can count on more than 600 wine growers that cultivate around 900 hectares of vineyards, including, of course, the 38 hectares of our Azienda Agricola. And one third, so almost 300 hectares, are already certified organic or in conversion to be organic. So the organic part is one of the most important things for us. And organic for us means not only a trend in the market, but means quality, because we believe that quality not only starts in the vineyards, but starts from the choice of the best plot of land or the perfect exposure, microclimate, etc., for a certain grape variety, for a certain style of wine. Therefore, everything starts from the beginning and ends up in the glass. Another major change that happened was in 2007 when we founded also a restaurant. So right now, I would say that our restaurant became one of the first brand ambassadors of our wines and of the food and cuisine of Trentino and Valle dei Laghi.
Great. Well, we'll talk about the restaurant a little bit further on, but it's a really interesting story to see how this cooperative of wine growers has evolved over the decades. Italy being a very cooperative country, and indeed Italian wine is still cooperative led. And this award is a demonstration of how cooperatives, the best cooperatives, are able to create truly great wine. So it's a very important story as well. Confused. You also have the 40 hectares of the ancient bishop's property. Is that different from the Azienda Agricola?
No, it is the Azienda Agricola.
That's the Azienda Agricola.
Yes, that's right. Because those lands, as almost all the lands in Valle dei Laghi, were owned by the Prince Bishop of the Church of Trento,
Okay.
which was one of the most important ones in Italy after Vatican, I would say. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, we rented those 38 hectares of land and we created the Azienda Agricola Toblino SRL, from which right now 5 years ago, we launched a project called Toblino Vent, that is a project of really premium and super premium wines, especially with some international and kind of local grape varieties that received prestigious awards in the first year, in the first vintage that we launched in 2020.
Okay. Now, before we turn to talking about this grape you've already mentioned, Nosiola, which is such an interesting grape, I just want to bring attention to something you've also mentioned, the Trento DOC, being one of the areas of real quality, classic, metodo classico, secondary fermentation in the bottle, sparkling wine. Now, Trento DOC, what does Trento DOC offer that is unique in character compared to, say, Franciacorta or Alta Langa, because these are the great sparkling wine areas of Italy, and I think they're not so well known outside of Italy, and they deserve to be much better known.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would say that it's not a case that Trento DOC is always linked to the word, to the phrase bollicine di montagna, so mountain bubbles, because most of the Trento DOC vineyards are located, we can say, above 300 meters above sea level, but the highest sites can reach even 900 meters above sea level. That means that we are talking about mountain viticulture. And so that is something that distinguishes us from other regions that are producing traditional method sparkling wines in Italy or abroad. So the first thing that we might notice is, of course, the high acidity that most Trento DOC wines have. At the same time, with a really long aging potential, we can say. First, another thing that I have to mention is that most of the Trento DOC is associated with the Chardonnay grape varieties, even though, of course, there's quite a lot of Pinot Noir also, and a little part of Pinot Meunier and Pinot Blanc. But I would say the focus is, of course, the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay is nowadays the second most planted grape variety in Trentino after Pinot Grigio, but for a really long time was the first one. So it means that Chardonnay for us is important both for the production of Trento DOC and excellent still white wines. Right now, Trento DOC has quite a good production. I would say that last numbers were between 7 and 8 million bottles, out of which, of course, Ferrari is the major player, and then there are others, big players, bigger or smaller players. But the thing is that everyone is starting to do excellent Trento DOC, and every Trento DOC has its own space on the national or international market. So I would say Trento DOC is one of the leading productions right now in Trentino Alto Adige. And of course, it's associated also with like celebrations, with the sports events right now. Ferrari is like promoting sponsoring the Formula One, for instance. So I would say Trento DOC in the now and in the near future will become even more and more successful.
Are you enjoying this podcast? Don't forget to visit our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, for fascinating videos covering Stevie Kim and her travels across Italy and beyond, meeting winemakers, eating local foods, and taking in the scenery.
Yes, I think so. And some fabulous, fabulous wines being produced. Some of the ones you've mentioned, and I look forward to trying the Cantina Toblino Trento DOC as well. But let's turn our attention now to this award-winning wine and to the grape that is used to produce it. Your award was for the Vino Santo Puro 2000, the 2000 vintage. But let's first talk about Nosiola. You mentioned it. You mentioned that it was once much more extensively grown in this area just north of Lago di Garda. What does Nosiola have that makes it so well adapted not only to this fabulous sweet wine, but also to the dry still wines?
First of all, right now, Nosiola has around, we can say, 55 hectares of vineyards. That means a really, really tiny production, 0.2% of the total vineyard area in Trentino, just to have an idea. of what we are talking about. But thanks to all the characteristics of the nosiola, so the high acidity, the quite high alcohol potential, the layered wines that you can produce with a full maturation of the grapes. So it has all the characteristics that can make a really great wine, both for dry wines and sweet wines. The thing is that there are other grapes that right now are more popular on the market. So even our members, our wine growers, are usually paid more for other grape varieties, especially, for instance, the Chardonnay or aromatic grape varieties like the Gewürztraminer. So what we decided to do in the last couple of years is to bring the level of payment, so the price of the Nozola grapes, almost at the same level of the Chardonnay for the sparkling wine production. Therefore, our wine growers are more than keen on keep on we can say planting or replanting Nosiola in their vineyards, because uh, out of 55 hectares existing of Nosiola, more almost 60% of that are owned by our wine growers. So we have the honor of bringing this tradition, this grape variety, into the future.
Okay. And that's a really good way to encourage that, since you have that high proportion and amongst your members, you can keep this great variety alive. Otherwise, it was at risk of even being extinct.
That's totally right. And, Nosiola, we are trying our best to make those Nosiola known worldwide, we can say, even though it's a tiny production. If you think about it, at Cantina Toblino, we are producing, I would say, two really great wines. One of them is the Vino Santo that comes to the market after, let's say, 15 or 16 years of aging. That is a sweet wine. And then we also have another wine called L'Argiller that comes to the market after seven and a half years of aging. That means that Nosiola not only has a really huge aging potential, but at the same time, it allows also, we can say, different winemaking techniques in the cellar to be put in place. In our case, we are using French oak of different size, from the barriques until the big barrels of 6,000 liters that we use for the Larginer. Another wine that we do, we also use acacia barrels. We are starting to experimenting with the amphoras. Some other producers are using concrete eggs, etc. So it's a really adaptable wine and grape variety.
Well, that's really fascinating. Let's turn our attention then to the Vino Santo and indeed to how this unique wine is made. I think some listeners will be familiar with a different wine, the Vin Santo from Tuscany, but the Vino Santo from your area, from Trento, is quite unique. Can you explain to us a little bit about this lengthy aging process and the production method?
Yeah, first of all, the most important difference is that Vino Santo Trentino can only be made with the Nozola grapes. So that's the main difference. And if you think about Vin Santo from Tuscany, you can do it with white and red grape varieties. If you think also about the Vin Santo Occhio di Pernice, that can be made with Sangiovese, for instance. So that's the first starting point. And then the Vino Santo, have a little bit of history, was kind of mentioned at the time of the Concilium of Trento, because the bishops that were meeting together to reform the Catholic Church after the Protestant reform were served, we can say, an ancestor of the Vino Santo Trentino, because they were talking about a wine that was made with white local grape varieties and was kind of sweet. So with the kind of drying, appassimento, and the vinification in oak, etc. But the real story, the real beginning of the Vino Santo Trentino was in the early 20th century, so in 1920, 1930, when some producers in the area, like Rebo Rigotti or the family Salvetta, Pisoni, etc., were starting to make their first Vino Santo, even though the appellation came later on. The thing is that the Vino Santo wasn't that popular back in time, especially in the second half of the 20th century. So some producers stopped to make it and started again in the 90s or early 2000s. But Cantina Toblino, since its first vintage in 1965, never stopped making Vino Santo. So we can say that this year, with the 2005 vintage that came to the market 1 month ago, we reached the 50th vintage of Vino Santo at Cantina.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. So the production starts of course, with the ancient or very old vineyards of Nosiola that can be between 30, 35 years old, that have really low production, really low yields, that concentrate the grapes. We harvest at the end of September, early October, with different picking days, we can say, because we want to reach the full maturation in all the grapes when the grapes turn almost gold in color. And then the drying process starts. We select the grapes, every single grape manually, and we place it in some gratings called arele, where the drying process starts and can last for almost 6 months until the Holy Week, until the end of March or early April days.
That's an incredibly long period of appassimento.
Actually, it's the longest one that is in the wine market, in the wine sector. And after that, we press the grapes with the vertical press, where you can do up to 5 cycles of pressing on the same grapes, and we start the fermentation. The yield of the grape malt is 20-25%, and so the fermentation takes quite a long time because we have more than 400 grams of residual sugar at the beginning, and it stops naturally when we reach 160, 170 grams and 13-40% in all. This process of fermentation can last up to 2.5 years. After that, we keep the wines for additional 12 years in the small oak barrels that can be even 60 years old, those barrels, and then 1.5 year in the bottle. In the end, we end up with a final yield of 10-12% due to the evaporation that happens in the barrels over those 14 or 15 years. So it's a unique wine. It's a very precious wine, very particular, but at the same time, not tiring, because we are pairing the residual sugar with the alcohol level, with the structure, with the complexity, but first of all, with the acidity.
That acidity, yeah. Letting it age and evolve for this lengthy period. It's a fascinating wine, and I love that link back to the Council of Trent, this incredibly important moment in European history when, as you say, it was at the time of the Reformation and very important events happening throughout Europe. I know that Cantina Toblino produces an extensive range of white wines, red wines, a wonderful rosato from Laghi. Sadly, we don't have time to discuss more of the wines, but I will hope our listeners will look out for the Cantina Toblino name. I'd like to briefly turn our attention to the Osteria Toblino, and just if you could talk us through some of the classic dishes of Trento that pair well with the wines from the Cantina Toblino, sort of foods that people can come to the Osteria to enjoy. And this is what I love about in tasting wines, is enjoying them, discovering them with the foods that go so well with them.
Yeah, Osteria Toblino changed, I would say, in the 2018 with the arrival of the chef Sebastian Sartorelli, a young chef that had many experience in like Michelin star restaurants and also in various fields of the food world, we can say, of the restaurant world. So he uses mainly local raw materials. So first of all, lake fish, river fish, mushrooms, vegetables, cheese from Trentino. So everything that is local. And one of the most important elements is also the oil. Oil that is grown in this area is called Casaliva cultivar, that brings this very, very nice oil. It's quite characteristic of the area because it's the highest, northernmost olive cultivar cultivated, in the world.
Oh, I didn't know that there was olive oil in Trentino Alto Adige.
There is. So I would say that the cuisine at Osteria Toblino brings together raw materials from the area, the traditions, at the same time with the gourmet touch. So presenting it in a very fancy, very trendy way. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's the first brand ambassador of Cantina Toblino and the local grape varieties grown in Trentino. Therefore, we pair all of our raw materials, all the fish, the cheese, the vegetables, the mushrooms, etc., with excellent wines from the area.
It sounds absolutely delicious. Just give me one example of a primo with a pairing, wine pairing, and a secondo and maybe a dolce, just to entice our listeners to come and visit you and enjoy this fabulous experience.
Yes, I would say the first thing that can be paired with our Largiller Nosiola can be a risotto with mushrooms, with different types of mushrooms. So very easygoing dish, very typical, but it's almost the perfect pairing with our Largiller that is very elegant, quite acidic, structured, complex, very long finish, etc. And another pairing that I would suggest with our Vino Santo, for instance, is another traditional dish called torta di fregolotti, which is a kind of cake made with almonds, nuts, etc. So a very dry cake that is similar, we can say, to sbrisolona, if some of the listeners know. That is a perfect pairing with our Vino Santo.
Well, they both sound absolutely wonderful. And you've been a great ambassador for both Cantina Toblino, but also for this beautiful area, the Valle dei Laghi. And I hope our listeners will be inspired to come and visit you and to discover your wines and also the beautiful area. Thank you very much for being my guest today. It's been a real pleasure meeting and talking with you. And I hope that I can come up to the Valle dei Laghi soon and actually meet you in person. Grazie, Giovanni.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the invitation. I will host you as soon as possible when you're coming to Italy and to Trentino.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. A presto.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Vinitaly Academy, home of the gold standard of Italian wine education. Do you want to be the next ambassador? Apply online at vinitalyinternational.com for courses in London, Austria, and Hong Kong, the 27th to the 29th of July. Remember to subscribe and like Italian Wine Podcast and catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods. You can also find our entire back catalog of episodes at ItalianWinePodcast.com.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.